I'm going to tell Michael welcome back because we actually recorded something earlier today in which we went over the whole investigation situation. And then about an hour later, a lot of things changed here, Michael. So I appreciate you coming back, and I want to make sure we address this topic properly. So in general, we saw the letter now that Congress, the Oversight Committee, sent to the FTC. You had a chance to look at it. In general, your initial thoughts.
Well, John, I think the big thing is that there's just a lot more detail than we knew. That the detail goes into specifics about allegations of 2 sets of books, into concealing revenue from the NFL in a way that allegedly involved assigning that revenue to other events, concerts, college football games, whatever they may be. So there were some specifics there that jumped out at me that it's a more convincing claim by the person that's bringing it, because there's at least some level of specificity. There are also emails. I mean, we haven't seen the emails, but
right.
we've seen the summary of them from a letter that 2 members of Congress wrote. So it certainly is troubling for the commanders if it's true. Now, there's still, but most of what's in that letter appears to be attributed to one person. There's another person referenced, but most of it is one person, though the emails, if in fact what they said are, if they're real emails, if they're authenticated, it's got to be worrisome for the team.
And what were some of those allegations? Did any of them jump out more than others as far as something that could be more problematic?
Well, from an NFL standpoint, I think the idea that they're using 2 sets of books, if that's true, and that they're putting revenue that should go towards NFL games into non-NFL events, I think that's a big deal just from the NFL world, not necessarily the law, but in terms of how the NFL is going to react to it. Now, have other teams done this? I don't know. I mean, this is sort of, I always think of, if you're in a league and one team is doing something, they may not be the only one doing it. So I'm not, I have no idea, right? We just know that this information is coming to light because of an investigation. If that same investigation were to look at other teams, could other teams be doing the same thing? We don't know. We know that one team is accused of it. That jumps out at me. I would also say the idea of not returning security deposits to customers, to fans, and encouraging them or directing them from buying cheaper tickets to paying more money and to going on a waiting list. That's going to really aggravate people that have spent money.
Right.
And during those years, as you know, there were some bad years for the team, and they were out there supporting them. If I were a fan, if it's true, I would be pretty angry. And that's going to get the interest of the Federal Trade Commission, which is charged with protecting consumers, could also get the attention of states' attorneys general, where fans are from. So there's that element to it as well.
From a law perspective, what would you need to see, I guess, to say like, hey, this is a real thing? The emails, everything seems damning right now. So what would you need to see from a legal perspective?
Yeah, one is, let's look at the emails. Let's see these. I mean, it's fine to see a summary of them and excerpts of them, but sometimes when there are summaries and excerpts, context is not put into it. So I'd want to see everything. Also, it looks like this was not testimony, but instead it was from an interview, which isn't the same thing. So there's no, it doesn't mean it's untrue, but with sworn testimony, the witness has the risk of being charged with perjury. If this was just an interview, there's still a risk of being charged with obstructing justice, lying to the government. I mean, there's other things, but it's not quite the same. So also, there are a lot of people referenced in this, right? Other people that work, I want to hear from them.
Right.
Maybe we will, but with everything, there's 2 sides to every story. So I'd want to know more.
And it just as a reporter, I reached out to all those people and I haven't heard back. So because for the same reason, you need to hear from their side too, because this is some serious allegations against them, not just the team, but against them personally as well. How do you think, as far as one of the topic is always, what does this mean for Dan Snyder's ownership?
Well, look, we haven't seen an owner kicked out by a vote, a majority owner kicked out. Will this be the one that does it, I guess it's possible, but it's really hard to expel an owner. It requires 3/4 of the other teams to go along with it. If, like we talked about earlier, John, this ticket stuff, is Washington the only team doing it? Because if there are other teams that are doing it, for any element of this, whether it be not sharing revenue, whether it be saying the revenue from one game goes to another, whether it's directing fans from buying cheap to seats, if any of that is occurring with other teams, they should be a little bit reticent before they jump in and attack, because the people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. So I'd want to know more about the other teams before jumping to, oh, this is the end of Daniel Snyder. He's faced a lot of stuff, and there's never been a vote. There's never been a recommendation that he be expelled. If it turns out that this is true and that other teams aren't doing this or something like it, then yeah, he would be at some risk. But there's a lot of daylight between those two scenarios.
Do you think if the FTC looks at this and say, okay, we've got to investigate, do you think they would then go to other teams, or would that be maybe finding some stuff in relation in terms of their investigation of here?
It's a great question. If I'm the FTC and one team is doing it, my instinct is going to be they're not the only one. So they could launch a league-wide investigation, conceivably. What makes this one team so different? Yeah, I realize they have Dan Snyder as the owner and he's unpopular, but if I'm a lawyer looking at this, I'm going to say, once you see one evidence of a team doing it, it just invites the question that they're not alone.
And then, as we discussed earlier too, if they try, let's say it progresses to the point where it's like they want to take a vote here, what could Dan Snyder do in terms of filing court, in terms of courts to hold this up, and how long could this drag on?
Yeah, it could drag on a while. I mean, so the FTC is pretty substantial authority in doing investigations. I don't know how he'd be able to stop that unless it interfered with attorney-client privilege or other documents. So he would face a tough task there. Now, if the FTC sues the team and sues him, he'd be able to offer a defense. If it's referred to the Department of Justice, then it conceivably takes on a criminal matter. I mean, we're nowhere near there, so I don't even want to suggest that.
Sure.
But he would have the ability to contest the allegations. He could argue this is defamatory. I mean, there are different things he could do. But in terms of the FTC, they have a pretty good amount of power, so they could cause some headaches.
What would the FTC be looking at? Again, we've heard of the emails, we've seen the documentation from that. What would they be looking at to see that this is a legit thing?
They're going to want to see if there's consumer harm. That's going to be their focus. Less so the NFL world. Their focus is going to be on, were consumers denied money they should have got? Or were they sort of tricked? I think the letter used the word tricked into paying more money for tickets. And they're going to be most likely focused on those things before looking at other stuff, because I think their focus is going to be, they're charged with protecting consumers. Those are consumer issues. And if I'm the team, I'm worried because those are my fans, right? This is not a random group of people. These are the people that are your fans. So if they're being treated poorly, that's not going to help.
What kind of evidence would they be looking to receive? Because again, would the emails be enough for them, or are they going to, what are they going to need to see, do you think, to say that, okay, this is more than legit?
They're going to want to see they're going to want to see the actual emails, not summaries or excerpts of them. Secondly, they're going to want to speak with the people mentioned in those emails and allow them to maybe explain these emails in a light that's different than as they're presented in the letter. So that would be a starting point. And they may want information from the NFL on tickets, on this whole process. Is what this team is accused of doing, how do we know it's so unique? They're going to think it's not, their instinct is going to be, let's answer the question in the letter, which is, this particular team is accused of stealing money from consumers, right? That's essentially what it is, that they're not returning money owed. They're going to think, well, if one team's doing it, let's look to see if this is some sort of pattern of misconduct.
What information could be provided? Because again, as you said, it's one source, it's corroborated by somebody who worked for him. And they certainly seem pretty damning again, but the Republican spokesman comes out and says, hey, calls it cherry picked, one-sided. What could another side present that could buttress this, if that's what their goal is to do, or if that's what they're trying to do?
I think, well, you're right. The Republicans have said this is a disgruntled former employee,
right,
whose allegations have not been corroborated by anyone else. So if I'm the Republicans, I'm going to say, let's find other people that will support that critique, that there are people who rebut what's in the letter, that can actually say this is untrue, that will go on record as saying this is untrue. As we talked about earlier, a lot of people mentioned in these emails,
right.
Maybe one of them will say, this is totally untrue. This is mischaracterizing, misframing what emails were intended to mean, and that this person has a history of workplace issues. Now, he was there for 24 years, so
24 years, yeah.
That's a long time. This is not someone that's there 3 months and then
right.
makes a bunch of accusations and leaves. So he, that's not going to help the team that he was a longtime employee. But maybe there are other employees that will offer a different narrative.
And like you said, there's a long way to go, but still a long way to go, I guess, from now to, hey, could Dan Snyder be out? But overall, even just for the NFL, how bad has this offseason been for them in terms of these lawsuits, whether it's this congressional investigation, the Brian Flores situation? How bad has it been for the NFL?
Well, I feel like every year they have some sort of legal controversy, which I guess is good for folks like me because it gives me things to write about. But I would answer that in two ways. The short term, you're right to point out there is a storm of issues that are hitting the league. The Brian Flores lawsuit, this, and now attorneys generals of 6 states
right.
are looking into workplace misconduct issues, presumably involving teams in those states. So yeah, there's a lot going on. On the other hand, will this have any effect on ratings? Will this have any effect on attendance? When the season starts, will people still be talking about it? I think there always seems to be a disconnect between these very serious legal issues and go back to concussions, right? I mean, we're talking about people's health. It didn't seem to have any impact, as far as I can tell, on fan interest. So my sense is that this will be a source of controversy, but people are look, I'm guilty. I watch the games. I enjoy watching the games. So, like this, there's a disconnect between these controversies and fan interest, which appears to be as high as ever.
Last thing, what do you think is the next step here?
I think the next step is the FTC will probably, a couple things. One is, I think we'll hear some sort of response from those that are mentioned in the emails. They'll hire a lawyer if they haven't already. They should, and that lawyer will issue some sort of statement denying allegations. The team will probably offer a more robust rebuttal of what's been alleged than simply saying it's untrue. I think now there's a lot of specifics here. They're going to have to tackle this, and it's not something they're going to do immediately. They'll probably take several days. Part of this now is let's figure out the facts. Some of this stuff is from a decade ago. A lot of the folks that were there then are no longer there. So tracing back, getting all the evidence and information is going to be part of it. The FTC will probably issue some sort of statement saying we're going to look into this, but that will likely not yield any sort of immediate return. So, and the NFL will presumably say that they're going to look into this, just like they have with every other controversy. They'll hire Mary Jo White's already investigating, so maybe her charge will be expanded. So, I mean, in a way, there's sort of a script to these things that I think we'll likely see play out.
Michael, I appreciate your time, and I need to tell people that you analyze this, you wrote about this for Sportico. People can go check it out there, and tell people where they can find you on Twitter and social media and follow your work.
No, thanks, Joe. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, McCann Sports Law. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. I know LinkedIn, for younger folks is maybe as interesting, but I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I'm not on Instagram though. So
I have found LinkedIn to be very important during this investigation. So there you
definitely
go. Again, read them on Sportico as well. So thank you very much for coming back on.
You got it. Thanks, John. Talk to you later.
Hey everybody, it's John Keim. Do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, and I'll continue to bring you guests who provide excellent insight into the Washington Commanders. And while you're here, check out the other terrific content on the Ampire Media Network, including Inside the Cap with Joel Corey and All's Caps with Steve Wino and former Washington Capitol Carl Alsner. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Thank you.